Stuart and I had 5 days in Barcelona ahead of a Mediterranean cruise. We'd been to Barcelona before, so the first day or two we were relaxing and adjusting to the jet lag, but then we decided to take a long walk across town to Parc Guell, which is a park designed by Gaudi in the early 20th century. It was about a 2-hour walk each way. So it's advisable to book a ticket or book a slot for your entry because it does get pretty busy. The park sort of has this organic design of these viaducts made of what looks like stacked stone. It was an overcast day, but still quite warm. And around the park there were various musicians playing. There are some museums you can see. There's a Gaudi museum. We tended to stay outside because we had to get a COVID test in a day or two, and so we didn't want to take any chances. We found about 2 hours was enough time to see Parc Guell. The gardens were beautiful. It's the middle of summer when we were there. And it was getting pretty busy, so we decided to walk back across town. And rather than taking the Funicular up to Vallvidrera, we decided to walk up the hill, which was pretty exhausting. So we spent the rest of the day relaxing on our terrace and watching the sunset over Barcelona. The next morning we awoke to a reasonably overcast day again, and we decided to walk along the ridgeline above the town from Vallvidrera to Tibidabo. It's only about a half an hour walk, but some great views. And at Tibidabo there is a large Roman Catholic church, and strangely beneath the Roman Catholic church there is an amusement park, which is pretty popular with the local kids, so there were a couple of school groups there. The church is enormous and is worth a walk inside. The amusement park is pretty old school. Ferris wheel, merry-go-round, the roller coasters, but the local kids seem to enjoy it. I guess they weren't at school. And as we were leaving, it looked like the roller coaster was actually coming out of the church. So we walked back down the ridgeline, back towards Vallvidrera, stopped at a cafe in the sort of park behind Vallvidrera, and the menu was in Catalan and Spanish. We didn't speak either, so we picked some random things and ended up with beers and olives and potatoes covered in tomato sauce. The next day the sun was out and we walked across town to Parc de Espanya. where you have the cascades, and it leads up to the National Palace, which is actually an art museum. That's the National Palace on the top of the hill there. The cascades is a series of fountains. To the right of the cascades is the Mies Pavilion, which is one of my favourite buildings in Barcelona. It was built for the exhibition in the early part of the 20th century, so it's hard to believe it's, 100 years or nearly 100 years old. For most of the time we were there were some guys sitting in the main room here. Eventually some of them moved, but one guy just sat there the whole time. So he is in my shot of the Mies Rohe Pavilion. So as you climb the cascades up to the National Palace, you get great views back over Barcelona. You can look over to the Sagrada Familia. We went there on our last trip to Barcelona, so we skipped that this time. And we had to get our COVID test that afternoon, which fortunately we passed. And we headed back to Vallvidrera on the train, and then later went out to dinner with some friends.
We have an enormous
plate of meat.
I think it's a mixed grill.
Spanish barbecue. Very nice. With a lovely rioja. Very good. And there we go. I'll take this. Oh, I should. And these are our friends, Andrew and Joseph. Our friends from Ireland and Barcelona.
Ireland and Japan.
And that night was the Festival of St Joan, which they celebrate with fireworks.
Triple bang, it's called.
Triple bang? Is it still going or?
Oh yeah.
In fact, they let all their 4- and 5-year-old children play with the fireworks, and so the fireworks were going right across town all night, which we could see from our terrace up in Vallvidrera. The next day we thought we'd go to Los Ramblas. I don't really understand the attraction of Los Ramblas. It's a real tourist trap. Lots of restaurants, nice trees, but you're so conscious of the pickpockets it's hard to relax as you walk down Los Ramblas. But we went from there to Old Town.
Oh well, we're in the old town of Barcelona, and the famous square.
I don't know what that building is. Something in Spanish, I imagine, or probably something in Catalan. To upset the Spanish.
And so we walked through the Gothic Quarter. Pretty busy with tourists, but also pretty pleasant. Well done, Stuart.
Tune his harp. His G strings out of that tune.
And from the Gothic Quarter we walked across to Passage de Gracia, which our friend Andrew from London describes as the Piccadilly of Barcelona. Lots of great shopping, but our favourite part are the various Gaudi buildings, Casa Batlló, and then a little further up the road there is Casa Mia, which is the apartment building. Casa Mia is also a museum, and you can actually get up to the rooftop and walk around the weird chimney pots. And from there we headed home, stopped at a bakery on the way and had a chocolate croissant and a cup of coffee. One last trip up the funicular to the top of the hill. Couldn't be bothered walking up that last time. And so we had one last evening in Vallvidrera before our cruise of the Mediterranean, which was to depart the next day. If you want to see more of these videos of our cruise of the Mediterranean and our trip through northern Italy, please hit the subscribe and like button.